Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Huge shout out and special thanks to the channel members. The manhwa starts with a man is streaming on a website called MeTube, and when one of the viewers asks what kind of stream it is, he says he's just going to yap, and that lately, he's been very stressed. One of the viewers, named Riemann, says that they are too. The man continues, saying that life's been difficult for him, and even though his younger siblings probably look to him as a role model, he doesn't know what he can do to make ends meet, especially considering the unemployment crisis. And since he's the oldest, he has to take responsibility for his family, and take care of his siblings. When asked about his other family members, we learn that he and his younger siblings live with their grandmother, and his rent's due tomorrow, but he'd feel bad if he asked his grandmother for rent money. One of the viewers says that he should use his time to work instead of streaming, and he says that he was discharged 2 months ago, and he's been looking for work ever since. And even though he needs money right now, that's just how it is. And if they don't want to listen to him talk, then they can just leave, and he only started to stream because he was feeling super stressed out. We see some woman lost in thought, and then he gets a 5 million won donation from her, making everybody confused. The man's surprised and asks her what's going on, and double checks with Riemann if they missed a zero or something. Then he thinks that maybe it's a big channel farming for clips, with the premise of giving a streamer with no views a ton of money, and looking for their reaction. He then starts to think about it, saying they don't have any money, so he can't give this back to them, as he has to get his younger sibling an admission gift, and he needs to pay off 6 months of rent. Some people in chat start asking for money, but Riemann ignores them and tells him she doesn't plan on taking the money back. He starts to think about it, and then tells her to give him some kind of request. As long as it does not pertain to his family, he'll do anything that she wants. Riemann then asks him if he will save Eden for her, and he wonders if maybe it's a game or something, and says sure, it's not a problem and he'll do it. Then he hears a voice in his head. Riemann says that they've now made a contract, and we learn that his name is Kim Si-woo. And we see a bright light appearing on his head. And due to him agreeing to save Eden, he was then transported there. We see his hand plunging through somebody's chest as he immediately latches onto something, pulling it out. He lets out a sigh and says goodbye to Lucifer as we see what he has just defeated was Lucifer, and he pulled his heart out. Lucifer's body then vanishes, and Si-woo wipes some of the blood away, saying it's all because he took one wrong donation that his life was flipped upside down. The crazy one was him, and he says that Riemann scammed him with a donation, and then summoned him here, and he's had to fight for his life every single day. It started out with a mace in his hands. Riemann said that she would offer him her strength, and that all he had to do was defeat the enemies in front of him. It's a very cliché situation. He tries to tell her that she's picked the wrong guy, and she should have picked someone more fit. But she tells him that he's the only one that she can rely on to save Eden. If he does save it, she'll send him back to Earth. He wonders if that's really all he has to do. He tells her that she better make sure that his siblings and grandmother live good lives, and get him a job when he gets back to Earth. If she keeps that promise, he'll save Eden, no worries. Like that, he ended up making a contract with the goddess of another world by the name of Riemann. She said they're the enemy, so what could he do except fight? And he made sure to give it his best. And in the end, since he was summoned by a goddess, he ended up becoming a pope for her. But that wasn't all, as Eden was crawling with demons and enemies, so he eradicated each and every one of them along with the 7 demon kings, as that was the only way for him to save Eden. It took him a grand total of 10 years. He wonders if his siblings are doing well, and if he'll be able to live a normal life when he returns to Earth. We hear Riemann's voice asking Si-woo if he's okay, and he says yes, asking what's wrong. She says that she's sorry, and thanks him, as their contract is now over. He smiles, saying that since she told him he'd have a job when he goes back, he'll believe her and leave. And he thought that the other world was draining, and godforsaken. But it's not as if it was all bad. She then tells him to look around at just the world he saved, and he says that he's gonna miss it a little bit. And he looks over making a bittersweet face, and then waves bye to Riemann, saying the next time she scams someone, she needs to be more shameless about it instead of being sorry. And he tells her bye. She thanks him, and as he's teleported back to Earth, she says that she truly is sorry. Si-woo's just happy that he's actually going back to his peaceful Earth. As he gets closer and closer, he says that he's missed Korea so much. And as he starts to descend in, he sees what should be his peaceful city of Seoul is littered with flying wyverns. Si-woo kind of stares at it in disbelief as he watches an all-out war take place between humanity and these monsters. Some Korean soldiers are even shit-talking in the chain of command, asking if they're just meant to be eaten. Si-woo says he's missed hearing Korean so much, Yet the very first thing he hears is profanity. But now he is truly back after 10 years, but he wonders what's going on with Earth. He laughs, saying that Earth is definitely done for, or maybe he's still dreaming on Eden, and that he just missed Korea so much that he ended up falling victim to the Queen of Nightmares. He smiles, saying nah, because there's no way that could happen. And Riemann cuts him off, saying that he took her head with his own 2 hands, and she calls him her Pope. Then she tells him he was incredibly sexy when he did it as well, just straight flirting with him. Siwoo turns to see her, and seems a little annoyed. She notices, saying that he doesn't look happy, and it seems that sending him back was pointless. He says he thought their contract ended with his return, and she says that she's sad as she is still a goddess who he served for a time, and at least he should show some love and respect, as it's all thanks to her that he returned here safe and sound. He said if it wasn't for her dragging him to that damn world in the first place, then he wouldn't have had to struggle so much to begin with. She then thinks about it, saying that if he had stayed on Earth, he would have died, and he's surprised, asking how she could possibly know that. She says that despite how he sees her, she is still a god in the end, as a status window appears saying that a god from another dimension is interfering with the principles of Earth, and a strong principle is being forced to comply, and due to an error, his time will stop for 5 minutes. Siwoo asks what she's doing, and Riemann says that 5 minutes seems rather short, but it must be because it's the dimension in which the main event is occurring, and it seems this is the limit of casualty despite her interfering as a god, and that she'll speak frankly to him, asking if he would like to make another contract with her. He asks if she means another slave contract, and she says this time, if he doesn't agree with it, then she won't try to force him, and he'll definitely want to have this contract because if he forms one with her, he'll be able to keep all the power he used in the other world. But of course, she doesn't have any believers here, so there would be some conditions. He says he thought those were powers he could just naturally keep using, and she says that moving across dimensions isn't so simple, and it's something that interferes with casualty, so losing his powers was a given. He starts to get annoyed, saying that she's driving him nuts, and she says that she knew forming another contract would be a bit much, as he endured so much in Eden after all, but he asks her what she's doing, and she's a little confused, and he tells her to hurry up and continue with the contract, because he doesn't want to not have his powers. She's still completely clueless, but bro just doesn't want to be some washed protagonist. A status window appears, saying that the Sancta said his contract is complete, and that Riemann supports Siwoo, as this is a contract for another dimension, the casualty will be investigated and judged. It tells him to wait as it counts down, as the investigation found no problems, so in 1 minute, the flow of time will resume. She then calls out to him, saying that unfortunately she doesn't have any infrastructure in this world, so she can't be with him for long, and she's sure that he has many things he'd like to ask her, but before that, there is something he absolutely must do. Divine power is a strength founded on belief in another being. If there is no faith, then it will cease to be, and as such, in order for him to maintain his strength, he must convert people on Earth to believe in her. She says it's surely that simple for him, as he was the Pope of the Riemann Order after all. He starts to sweat nervously, thinking about it, and she says that they'll see each other again in no time, and try not to cry because he misses her, and she leaves, once more calling him her Pope. He tells her to wait, but the flow of time has now been resumed, and a quest has been given to him. The quest is to found the order, and it's pretty much what we just talked about, with her having a lack of believers, and the time limit of the quest is 90 days, and if he doesn't complete it, everything he possesses will be reset. He's still a little taken aback by the fact that they're going to have one in this world, saying that they're just going to see him like a cult leader, and one of the wyverns screeches while flying in towards him. It begins to open its mouth, and he turns, watching as it starts to get closer. The air around Siwoo gets serious. As he glares at the wyvern, lightning begins to form in his hand, and he stretches his hand out, grabbing onto the wyvern's wing, ripping it off of its body, causing it to scream even more. All of the soldiers ask if this is real, and when Siwoo turns, with blood on his face, he immediately understands that he could take this chance to recruit them. While the 3 dudes are still surprised, he asks if they would like to hear about their Lord and Savior, Riemann. They look at him like he's crazy, and Siwoo starts to realize that maybe he is completely screwed. They tell him no, and they're sorry, and we see that he actually has to get 10,000 followers, so maybe he is cooked. Siwoo decides to brush it off, and we see him ripping the wings off of more wyverns, as he's decided just to get to work dealing with the monsters at hand. He then locks in as a massive lightning bolt forms, striking down a wyvern in the sky, and all of the soldiers sit there with blank expressions on their faces. One of them mentions that they're not picking up any magic in the detector, asking if a returner is meant to be this strong. They say that typically the rank of a returner is determined by how much magic is detected from them, but there's no way a returner who drops wyverns like this is of a regular rank, as that feat alone is at least the power of a disaster rank returner, as we see him surrounded by wyvern corpses. The man then says, in accordance with the emergency response manual at the Special Investigation Bureau, he requests the immediate summoning of the entire bureau. Over his walkie-talkie, they ask if the situation is that bad, and he says it's not about the gate, as they have confirmed the presence of an immensely strong returner who isn't getting detected by the magic detectors, which means he isn't a regular outside of their current standards. The man says he'll talk to them first, and they should just send in support, and just in case, he tells them it was nice working with them. We learn that his name is Dongshik, and Siwoo looks around, asking if that was really it, and he says he's pretty much just a human flyswatter at this point, but wonders where all the soldiers went. On cue, Dongshik runs over to him, and when Siwoo turns and starts looking at him, Siwoo wonders if this guy is the boss, and he looks like a pain in the ass, wondering if he was maybe not supposed to catch the wyverns. But immediately, Dongshik gets all happy, telling him it's nice to meet him, and says that he would love to help him get settled in, leaving Siwoo confused because he's not the only one who's confused. It then jumps to an apartment complex in the Gyeonggi province, specifically Gwanghwamun City. As Siwoo stands before the door, he recaps his conversation that he had with Dongshik. Dongshik told him that he looked into his family, and both his brother and sister are safe, as they're living in the Gyeonggi province, and his grandmother is still traveling in the United States. Then he pretty much just rants about how, at their Department of Ability Management, they'll help and support him at all costs, and if he has any questions to just contact him. Siwoo says it seems they are very welcoming, but everything seems fine, and he expected his siblings to figure something out, no matter how much the world changed. His grandmother has always been eccentric as well. And he says that since it's been 10 years, his younger brother In-wook should be around 27, but Dongshik says he might be surprised by this, but it's only been 5 years here on Earth, and that means if he spent 10 years in Eden, he isn't 32, but 27. He says he doesn't know how much the Earth has changed in the last 5 years, but the people here seem to treat its returners well, and it's great to hear that they're all doing well, wondering if Riemann had something to do with that. And he says that his family, who he missed even at Eden, is something that he's been longing for ever since, as he didn't even have a photo with him. But he wonders why he's so nervous, saying it's the most nervous he's ever been. And he rings on the doorbell, only for it to be silent. He rings it a couple more times, until we hear In-wook asking him who's there. Siwoo clears his throat anxiously and tells his brother it's been a while, asking him how he's been, as he's super excited. But In-wook just tells him that they aren't religious, and it completely blows him off, asking if he's really trying to go door to door to convert people in this day and age. Siwoo tries to tell him that's not what he's here for, and In-wook says he should change his clothes before he tries to deny it, and he'll call the police if he doesn't leave. And he clicks his tongue, saying he was having such a good nap, calling him crazy. Siwoo starts to get pissed and yells, telling him to open the damn door. In-wook comes out with a bat in his hand, calling him a crazy cultist, asking if wants to get his ass kicked, only to recognize him, and Siwoo asks if he's going to hit him with that thing. In-wook immediately freezes up, surprised to see his brother. Siwoo says it wasn't quite the emotional return reunion he expected. As we see his brother making him food, he tells his brother to make him 3 more, as he's eating a bowl of ramen. Siwoo says even if the reunion wasn't emotional, the food sure did hit, as it's his first time in 10 years eating Korean food. In-wook sighs, saying he can't believe it. Siwoo asks what he's talking about. In-wook says that he thought his brother died, yet now he's sitting here and is eating all of their ramen while dressed like a cultist. Siwoo says he shouldn't use that word on his brother, asking if he's mad that he ate without him, saying he should eat too. And In-wook says that's not it. Turns out that Siwoo's told him everything. And In-wook starts to ask him about Eden in the last 10 years. Siwoo says that it surely doesn't really matter, since he's back safe and sound, asking what he's so curious about. And In-wook sits there for a second, thinking about it, and tells him everything. He wonders what he did in the other world all this time, and how he came back. As that's the most important thing, wondering why he hasn't mentioned it. Siwoo goes to tell him that is about what he did there, but then he thinks about how everything he's accomplished was just him having a brutal crusade, and hesitates for a second, and tells his brother never mind. In-wook says that there are 2 things people hate. The first is when someone doesn't finish their sentence, and before he can finish the other one, Siwoo just tells him that it's not a fun story. Most stories like this aren't. The world taken over by demons was so horrendous that the amount of blood he got on his hands trying to save it was just way too much. He busted his ass fighting for Eden, and now he's finally back on Earth. He looks over at his quest notification, and how it still hasn't moved at all. He starts to get a bit annoyed, saying he spent so long growing his holy power to this level, yet he's probably just going to lose it all. In-wook tells him to go ahead and finish his food, as he's going to go get some work done since he is awake, as he sits down on his computer. Si-woo asks what he's doing, and In-wook says that he works as a MeTube editor, and he's been making money doing this since he disappeared, and he has a lot of work, as he's editing for a pretty big MeTuber. Si-woo says that's admirable, and he always seemed interested in video editing, so he's glad he ended up doing it. He tells his brother that the video looks realistic, and his brother says he probably didn't know this, but it is all real, and there are people called players, and they go and take care of gates, monsters, and dungeons, just like out of novels. Si-woo asks if they use system windows as scales too, and In-wook says yeah, saying that since he used to read so many web novels, he's sure it made sense to him very quickly. But Si-woo seems to start really thinking about it, while his brother yaps. He thinks about how MeTube might be his way out, and he tells his brother this is it, which startles him. If he makes MeTube content, he'll be able to expose the Riemann order and get subscribers and followers. Then the status window tells him that his religious order trait has been activated. Si-woo turns, wondering what it means, only to see that it explains pretty much everything about the order, the objective, and how he can use divine points in the store, and the items will change based on the amount of followers. The only option at the moment is called charity, which means all followers of the order will have extra experience earned, and an extremely small chance of awakening the target if they aren't the player, which costs 1,000 points. And then his next one is at 10,000 followers. Si-woo wonders if this popped up because he thought of starting a channel, saying pretty much everything is locked still, so there's nothing useful. But charity might come in handy, and he'd want to ask if he's going to start a channel, saying he doesn't want to be the one to tell him, but it probably won't work out, because he needs to be approved by the government if he wants to create player-type content, and not everybody can do it. But it can't be helped, as he doesn't know anything since he just got back, so he'll provide for him as he earns quite well. Si-woo says he appreciates the gesture, but he's full of it, and he's the one who doesn't know anything, asking how he would have found him after being gone for 5 years. And it was none other than thanks to the government's help that he was brought here, and when Dongshik asked what he was going to do, Si-woo says that he wants to expand his order. Dongshik says that Korea is a free country, and freedom of religion comes with it, but he hopes the beliefs don't go against any conventional norms. Si-woo says that she's a merciful goddess, and if he just hears him out, he'll understand. Dongshik says sure, and then after a bit of talking, Dongshik pulls out the classic just smile and wave, not actually wanting to be converted. And then he tells him that he's a VIP of the Department of Ability Management, and if he needs something done, to contact him, and welcomes him back to Earth, as he is the first irregular of South Korea. And his brother starts pogging out of his gourd, while Si-woo seems all proud. In-wook says that he can't believe that the same guy who just stuffed his face with 10 packs of ramen could be an irregular. Si-woo jokes, saying that he'll kill him, and In-wook wonders why he didn't just say that first, and Si-woo says he can't tell him that he'll lose his power if he doesn't get 10,000 followers. In-wook says that since he was a pope, he's probably going to start the MeTube to get followers for the order, asking if he's right. And if that's the case, it's not going to be easy when he's wearing clothes like that, as it's not like anyone here on Earth knows who his goddess is. Si-woo tells him to hear him out, asking what if he has the ability that can awaken regular people. In-wook says if he has that ability, he'll be recruited by pretty much every country. But there's no way such an ability exists, as he would make a fortune, and he would immediately sign up to it as well. Si-woo doesn't even try to fight any of his arguments, and only says that his goddess is one of mercy and charity, and he shows him his status window. In-wook wonders if that means he can become a player if he only believes, but Si-woo says that he can't do it yet, but if he gets more followers, he thinks he can buy the trait. And that will make becoming a player not up to a random chance, but something that everybody can work towards. Asking his brother what he thinks, and we see the count of millions of followers that he's got. As In-wook says he's already ready for it, as he's ready to spread the good word of their Lord and Savior. Si-woo's surprised that he's already so into it, and In-wook just screams, telling Riemann that he believes in her. Si-woo says that he thought In-wook was an atheist, and In-wook just tells him to take him in already. Si-woo says to become a believer despite having never seen Riemann, he would expect no less from his younger brother. For now, his plan is to have a sort of online service using MeTube, but he still hasn't figured out the details. In-wook tells him not to worry, as he has a plan. The door then starts to beep, and Si-woo wonders who it is. In-wook tells him that it's finally time, and that he has to take responsibility. Siwoo is still confused until the door opens, and we see a little girl. Siwoo immediately recognizes it as Siyun, his little sister, who is really surprised to see her older brother. Siwoo quickly runs over, saying that she's gotten pretty, and surely she missed him. Her voice starts to break as she says that she thought he was dead, and right as she's on the verge of tears, he tells her that he was wrong, and he's sorry for leaving without saying anything. But she immediately starts bawling her eyes out, and he tries to get her to stop, but she just gets even louder, and Siwoo just asks his brother to come help him. But In-wook says that this is karma. The next day, we see Siyun making a pinky promise to Siwoo that they're gonna go eat some food later. She says that she knows a really good place, so he has to eat there with her, and she'll be back, and he waves her off to school. After that warlike day ended yesterday, they went around to all the neighbors and apologized for the noise, and peace finally returned. Siwoo heads downtown, and he's telling somebody that he talked with his brother, but for Awaken to properly be active on MeTube, they need state authorization. We see a man in front of Dongshik saying that they'll support him as much as he needs, and he's sorry for coming to find him so late. And he introduces himself as Yu Sun-ho. He is the Minister for the Department of Ability Management. Siwoo says he learned a bit about him before he came over here, and he didn't expect to get straight to the head honcho, but he guesses that's the power he has, which was similar on Eden. Since the Riemann Order is the first religious order in Eden, leaders of all species came together before. Sun-ho asks if he's going to be going on missionary activities, and Siwoo says yes. Sun-ho awkwardly says that's good, and says it's okay for him to reveal that he's a returner on MeTube, but he needs to also reveal that he's an irregular through a press conference sponsored by their department. Siwoo agrees, and then we see a video of the day he returned, killing the wyverns. Siwoo asks if this has been released already, and Sun-ho says they put an embargo on it, but they couldn't block it. Siwoo says that he's sure his brother, who is well versed in MeTube, has probably seen it already. Sun-ho says he might feel bad about it, but they'll assign some agents around him for a while, and he promises that on his name that there won't be any harm dealt to him. Since an irregular rank has never appeared in South Korea, their management is still lacking, so hopefully he can forgive them. Siwoo says if you think about it, it makes sense, and there's not really any problems with this, so he'll just go with it. Then it jumps back to him at the house, and his grandma is calling him rotten, saying if he returned, he should have contacted her immediately. He apologizes to her, and she says it's fine since he has come back. She's going to finish her travels, and he should take care of Siyun and In-wook. He tells her to make sure to stay careful, and then the phone hangs up, and he says that Granny's speaking as if she obviously knew he'd come back. In-wook says that she actually mentioned having dreams of him, and according to her dreams, she witnessed him sometimes steadily walking across an endless horizon and fighting winged monsters, and he wonders if that's what gave her such beliefs. Siwoo says it sure is fascinating, and In-wook says he also thought that his brother was dead, but the fact that he's here doesn't feel real yet. Siwoo starts to just feel happy that he's being welcomed, and he explains that they all had a great relationship in the past, even more so during his senior year of high school. After their parents died in a car accident, it would have been hard if their grandma didn't raise them. He says In-wook must have waited for him for quite a while, and in the end, he gave up thinking he was dead. In-wook then tells him that they made his funeral a woodland burial, and there's a tree with his name on it, and they should have done a 5-year contract, but they ended up deciding to do a 10-year one. Siyun made it really pretty, and Siwoo says they should just go get a refund. Siwoo says his brother sure can lock in as he starts editing the video, and then he says that he should tell him about the thing he mentioned last time, and his brother says he has a plan, showing him a MeTube channel called Player K with 5.4 million subs, and he's going to be able to do that. Siwoo then starts looking at the video, analyzing it, saying that the reason he has so many subs is because he's handsome. In-wook says that he has a great personality too, and he's had no controversy so far, and he pays him consistently. His brother says right now, actually just having the channel is good because it usually takes around 2 weeks, and as his brother is aware, the easiest way for those who are starting channels to get attention is through the help of bigger channels and corporations, and there's content that he can participate in that Player K is doing as well. It is the Newbie Military Academy. Pretty much just guides and walkthroughs, like if you were looking at Khan Academy. When we learn Player K's name is actually Min-soo, and he teaches newbies a lot. There happens to be an opening because one of them got hurt while catching a monster, and when In-wook talked to him about it, Min-soo said he'd like to do an interview. Siwoo asks his brother if he really thinks he's a newbie, saying from what he sees Min-soo is the one with less experience. His brother laughs, saying that's exactly the plan, and he says that they're going to go with the main character hiding his power, and that they're going to participate with this kind of concept, asking if he thinks it's a good plan for their channel. He hasn't told Minsu the details yet, but if he does, he will definitely think of it positively, and they should just do the interview and proceed to the rest after, as Minsu likes this type of content. His brother wonders what kind of monster he's awoken, and then it jumps to them driving the car, and Siwoo says the filming site is far, and his brother tells him that they're almost there, and it'll be another 30 minutes, and they finally arrive at the Magam mountain range. They get out of their car and look around, and Siwoo says that this atmosphere is hella creepy, asking if this is the right place. In-wook says yes, but the atmosphere is definitely a bit odd, and that Minsu isn't answering his phone. Siwoo says since the signal isn't good, it's quite strange as well, and he didn't know there was a place like this left in South Korea, and he can tell that something's quite not right, as there's traces of stuff in the air. He tells his brother that they should go back, as they're gonna suspend the project. His brother tells him to wait, and he's probably just busy filming, which is why he can't pick up the phone, and they should just go find him first. But Siwoo says no, after his endless fights in Eden and his extremely developed senses from receiving Riman's blessing. This is demonic energy that only monsters and demons can give off. Siwoo asks his brother if Minsu is actually a good person and if there's any rumors about him sacrificing people and worshipping demons. In-wook says no, as he's a really famous MeTuber, and Siwoo says that if he was a normal returner, they would have already died, asking him if he understands what that means. In-wook says there's no way, as Minsu is a good person. Siwoo says, my ass, and he just trusts people too easily, and if he keeps doing that, he's gonna be stabbed in the back. In-wook asks why he's so angry, saying he sounds like he's experienced it firsthand. All Siwoo can think of is Riman, but says nothing like that has ever happened. In-wook says 3 years ago, Granny was in the hospital, and Minsu came by and paid for all the hospital bills without saying a single word to him, and he had no money back then because he had just paid for the rent. Siwoo says on second thought, bro sounds like a hero, and he should have just led with that. Suspecting someone who would help another in financial risk is indeed no easy task. If it was 3 years ago, it means that it took place when he wasn't around, and he might actually be a great person. Siwoo tells In-wook that he needs to return home in the taxi he took here, as this place is too dangerous. When In-wook asks about him, Siwoo says that since his plan isn't going to work, he needs a workaround. He taps his shoulder as his clothes start to magically swap to his priest outfit, and he says since online propagation won't work, he'll have to try to do it offline as he strikes a pose. In-wook is confused, asking if he's some kind of magical girl, and begs that he let him record him transforming next time. But Siwoo kicks him into the van, telling him to leave. In-wook says he needs to use it for their MeTube intro. Siwoo says his brother used to not be this stubborn, but In-wook guesses it's his fault in the end. After a bit of walking through the forest, Siwoo stumbles across something, and a status window appears that he has entered the Abyss area. A related quest has been created, and it's a quest called Salvation. It will give him 50 divine points if he frees those who are facing torment in these lands. More demonic energy begins to flow through the air, and Siwoo says at first glance it looks like an ordinary mountain, but with this much energy around, there's got to be an abyss dungeon of sorts inside. He continues walking, and it's eerily quiet. He then stops as he's now sensed something nearby, and he turns, telling people that the weather sure is nice today, as we see cameramen. Siwoo asks what they are all doing. They say they didn't mean to scare him, and they were just filming for their channel. One of them asks what he's doing here, saying it's dangerous to be here with a dungeon nearby, and Siwoo says that he's here to meet Minsu, and his little brother must have contacted them asking if they got anything. The guy says that he must be the returner he's heard about, and Minsu did mention something about an interview, and if he just gave them a call, they would have met him at the entrance. But Siwoo says his phone isn't working. The cameraman says that he can't believe there's a place in Korea with no network, though it's a relief to have met them like this, and they can guide him to Minsu. After a bit of walking, one of the cameramen starts to yap his ear off, saying they've been planning a very huge event. He's been helping Minsu for a while, and so has In-wook, and he asks if the priest's outfit is part of Siwoo's concept, but Siwoo says it's not. The dude says that it's unique and memorable, and it's a great tactic. Siwoo says this guy talks way too much. The dude says it's his first time meeting a returner, and laughs. Then Siwoo looks around, saying he has a question, asking if the three in the back are usually this quiet. The cameraman asks what he's talking about, saying they've been talking the entire time, as bro's eyes go absolutely crazy. Siwoo thinks about it, and then asks the guy his name, and he introduces himself as Sul Samyeong. Siwoo tells Samyeong to listen to what he has to say. As he taps his hands, His gloves then begin to appear on him, just like his outfit earlier, and he says that he's a very lucky person, as some people possess innate resistance to demonic energy, even though they aren't awakened. He needs to make sure he thanks his parents for this. Samyeong asks what he means, and Siwoo says that if he goes home alive today, he needs to make sure to give his parents a hug. Lightning then begins to appear at the tip of his finger, and it shoots out directly forward, blowing the heads off one of the cameramen behind Samyeong. His face gets painted by some type of residue. Samyeong starts to scream as we see the three dudes are actually just leaking demonic essence rather than blood and standing there without their heads. Samyeong asks what the hell this is, and Siwoo says it seems like he's putting on quite a show from the start, and the rest must be deeper inside, but it should be safe here. He tells Samyeong to wait for him to come back. Samyeong asks who he is and what he's here for, saying he doesn't know what's going on anymore. Siwoo says there's only one way to explain it, and he's just here to spread the word of his goddess, as he starts to put on his typical priest smile. All Samyeong can do is be blinded by the light. Siwoo then enters the dungeon, and it's one called the Necromancer's Laboratory, which is in the process of abyssification. The dungeon name then changes from the Necromancer's Laboratory to the Bridgehead of Pride, and if he does not defeat the boss of the dungeon, all land within a 5 kilometers radius will be corrupted by the abyss. Siwoo says he doesn't know much about the abyssification, but the demonic energy has become much more intense, and he can also sense the magic of other players, and there must be quite a few left trying to resist the demonic energy. As he walks forward, he says it should be around here, and he sees lots of men slumped up against a box. It seems there are 2 of them, and he says that they are still alive, but they are completely faceless. This clears up the identity of the creature he destroyed before entering the dungeon, and that they are actually mimics. They are monsters that knock out people and then transform into them and impersonate them. The reason they knock them out is because they can't transform into dead people, and since mimics are a low-level monster, they don't have vocal cords and are unable to speak, so they can't exist by themselves, which means the boss must be the doppelganger. Siwoo knows exactly what it is. The status window then says he has confirmed the keyword doppelganger, and it reveals that he is correct about it. Siwoo says he expected as much, and monsters like mimics, which can turn into others, are a pain to deal with even with prior knowledge, and it would be a living hell if they were to turn into their allies. He then hears somebody screaming, and he immediately wonders if it is a survivor or a doppelganger, but runs in saying it doesn't matter right now anyway. Siwoo sees a light and wonders if there are monsters crowded around whoever's screaming. He dashes through the blinding lights, only to see that there are lights set up on a tripod, and someone yells cut, telling Siwoo he can't just pop out of nowhere, saying he was going so well a minute ago. Siwoo is surprised that there are survivors and that there are actually quite a few of them. The people say that now they have to shoot it all over again, asking if they just let him through, as they rented this dungeon out to shoot, so he can't just come in here like this. Siwoo says he heard screams and acted on instinct, and he's sorry for that. And the people outside let him in when he said he was here to meet Min-soo. The guy asks what he's here to see him for, and Siwoo says that he made plans to meet him for a face-to-face interview. The dude says that he must be the returner, and he's wondering why he was dressed so oddly. Siwoo holds back his anger and says yes, that's him, as he can't believe they're making fun of his drip. The guy then asks his co-workers if the walkie-talkies are still broken, and he tells one of the people nearby to guide him to Min-soo. The person asks if they're okay with being more casual to Siwoo, and he says sure as they guide him away. Siwoo looks around, saying fortunately a few people haven't been afflicted by the demonic energy yet. But there still are quite a few who are. As he sees another faceless girl, he says that the doppelganger's group illusion is like a theater where the doppelganger is the protagonist and is currently in progress. Even the players who haven't been afflicted by the energy are still under its effects, and if it's using group illusion, it means that it's gained a lot of power. That's probably why the demonic energy is seeping outside of the dungeon. The guide then tells him that he doesn't need to be so nervous and that the whole place is under control. He asks what they mean, and they say they have the boss in captivity. Siwoo asks what he means by captured it, asking what the hell he just heard, and the dude says this is usually how they do shootings in dungeons because the dungeon will vanish if they kill the boss, so they can't have that. But they also can't have it roaming freely, so they weaken the boss and tie it down. Then the other monsters in the dungeon are weakened too, making it easy to film. He says that basically means they just push it to the brink of death and keep it alive. The dude says yes, saying it's efficient, and Siwoo says maybe Satan should have learned from humans. He says if they've been doing it all this time and it's been fine, they probably just got unlucky with the doppelganger, but it's probably just karma. In-wook seems to have faith in Min-soo, but it doesn't seem as if Minsu knows what safety is, and this probably won't work out. They head to the boss room, and the dude tells him that Minsu should be waiting for him inside and he'll come back to film together later. Siwoo thanks him and watches him leave. Then he opens the door as we see Minsu talking to some people. One of the people Minsu is talking to deadpan stares behind him, and Minsu turns, wondering what he's looking at, only to see Siwoo asking what brings him here. Siwoo introduces himself as In-wook's brother, and Minsu says he's heard a lot about him and was wondering when he'd get here. He's much more handsome than he described. Siwoo says that this dude is straight glowing and his voice is nice too. Minsu says that it must have been hard for him coming all the way here to take a seat. Siwoo goes over on the side and sits down. Minsu asks if they can edit the video like he'd asked, and he's going to go talk to Siwoo for a bit. Siwoo says that MeTubers sure are busy. Minsu laughs, saying that he should have something better to offer since he came a long way, but all he has is instant coffee, but Siwoo says he likes it. Minsu asks if the journey was okay, and Siwoo says that there was some staff that brought him here and there were actually a lot of people on the way. Minsu says that realism is important for the project, so they bring in all the editors who can help. Siwoo asks if everybody here is a player. Minsu says yes, but they're usually just a little too unskilled to work as hunters, as not all players are the same, but he does pay them very nicely. Siwoo wonders if maybe In-wook wants to be a player because of Minsu. Minsu says that he heard In-wook would be coming too, asking if he's waiting outside, but Siwoo says he's not feeling well, so he just came alone. Minsu asks if he got sick again, saying that he got sick often in the past when editing his videos, and he'll send him some treats. Siwoo says that the most efficient way to strike up a conversation with someone you don't know is to talk about what you have in common, and he can tell that this guy is really sociable. He wonders if he was always like this or if he changed after becoming an influencer. Siwoo starts to laugh, calling him an interesting guy. Minsu asks what he means, but Siwoo says he meant his brother, as he's always been very weak, and Minsu laughs, saying he thought so. Minsu says that Siwoo's pretty handsome and since he's a player, but Siwoo cuts him off, saying he has a question. He says that he's a bit of a worrywart, asking if it's safe to film here. Minsu says he understands it's his first time in a dungeon, telling him to take a look at this as he moves a curtain over. Siwoo, surprised, sees that what he is staring at is none other than the boss monster all chained up. Minsu says above all else is that he prioritizes safety, and there are quite a few dangerous scenes on MeTube, but they can ensure safety comes first before anything is filmed. Siwoo says he heard that one person had to drop out of the project, though, and Minsu says they weren't hurt on the scene as they already had a disease, and it just got worse. If he's worried about safety, he can just watch for a bit and decide if he wants to join. Siwoo looks at him suspiciously and then chugs his instant coffee, saying okay, and Minsu reassures him that he has no intention of pressuring him into this. But Siwoo says that they should just do it, and they should shake hands since they're colleagues. Minsu then welcomes him to the team, only for Siwoo to start electrocuting him. Minsu asks him what he thinks he is doing, only for him to start screaming as his entire form starts to shift. Siwoo is just smiling deviously, and a status window says the information of the passive skill Sacred Fire has been synchronized. Siwoo says it's not fun if they are the only ones deceiving them, and a play should have some plot twists. As Minsu's hands start to get charred, Siwoo asks him if he agrees, but all Minsu can do is scream and fall to his knees in complete pain. Siwoo then goes to his ear and whispers, asking him how his acting was, as he puts his hand on his shoulder, revealing that it was a doppelganger. If you've watched till the end, comment, winner, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.